Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Nordic Football Podcast. My name is Steve Wiss, and I'm joined, as ever, by Jonathan Verdugber. How are you doing, pal?
Hi, Steve. Hi, everybody. Welcome to this latest episode of the Nordic Football Podcast, episode 105. I'm doing very well, Steve. We've had two for the price of one this week in Sweden. There was a round at the weekend, of course, as normal, and a midweek round. We're now 20 games into the season, so it's a nice point to kind of reflect, sort of look at what's going on in Sweden. 10 games to go, and things are sort of really starting to heat up at the bottom and top of the table, really. So, I'm actually quite excited, looking forward to this episode and, sort of just going into the league and what's been happening. How are you, my friend?
I'm all right, yeah. I mean, this midweek round, it kind of caught me out by surprise. I think it was like 50 minutes to go until deadline, and you're like, Steve, have you done your fantasy lineup for this round yet? And, of course, I've forgotten. So, this one caught me out a bit, but there's been plenty of action going on. It's been really busy with me recently. I've been keeping tabs of a lot of leagues that have been having midweek rounds and things like that, and a few other things going on at home. So it's been a busy period for me, mate.
Yeah, in terms of Allsvenskan fantasy, by the way, I am we do have a Nordic Football Podcast League. And I'm delighted to inform listeners that I've just leapfrogged Steve in the table, 1 point ahead of him after this midweek round. Although I think you do have someone on your bench coming on, so I'm going to enjoy it while I can. So it might change as of tomorrow. But quickly, for those who if you do listen to the show and you're regulars and you follow it, just want to name the top 5 with 10 games to go while we're at it. So give a shout out to Average at FPL in 5th place, Flat Pack 4. He picked up 65 points, and he's in 5th place there with 1,313 points. 4th, we've got Adrian Markstead, Saku's Revenge, and he got 75 points this week. Decent round, and he's up to 4th, 1,325 points. Marcus Nielsen with FC Bonky, 60 points, and he's now 1,327, just narrowly ahead of Adrian there. 2nd place, Philip Christiansen, who always seems to be there or thereabouts, I think. Seen that name many times before. 1,343 points. He got 61 points. The name of his side I won't try and pronounce because it's, I think, maybe even Norwegian, is it? I'm not sure, Swedish or Norwegian there. And top of the tree, a regular, actually, especially on Twitter. He's supported the pod for quite some time. It is none other than at Nororts with the Rat Pack, 58 points, and he's on 1,345. So there's 2 points at the top there between Philip and at Nororts. Nororts, I'm pretty sure, is an AIK fan, which could take us nicely into our analysis of the title race, to be honest, because that's probably where we're going to start, isn't it, Steve? But all things fantasy. I mean, if anyone hasn't joined the league yet, I don't even know the code now, but you've got 10 games to do it. If you haven't done your team, then it's pointless, to be honest, because you're too late. But if you're sort of already in a league and you just wanted to join our league, by the way, you can, and the code is HQ8GU7. So you just whack that into the Allsvenskan fantasy.allsvenskan.se, and then you can obviously you'll join the league automatically with your points total, and you can see where you are. There's about, I think, 150 players in our league this season, isn't there, Steve? And you're disappointed to have missed your deadline.
We've had some great interest in this fantasy league this year. We had well over 100 in, which was quite good, really. First season, we've really gone to town with it and everything. But I mean, I'm in 66 overall right now. I've been really pleased with my Allsvenskan fantasy season. If I could make the top 50, and I'm just looking at the 50th position now. A rather interesting name at 50th, which I probably best not say actually. But Justin Graham's team with 1,156 points. So I'm 66 points off that. I've still got a couple of chips left. If I could make the top 50, I'll be happy. And then, if I could beat you as well, that would be doubly happy. But, thanks for all your interest in the fantasy league so far.
Yeah, the race is definitely on. I see actually quite a few. What I like about the league is there's a lot of listeners that, I can see, for example, Neil Baxter there with Berg Britt on 41st in the league. So it's nice sort of going through the league and you see friends of the pod, Jimmy Schlichting with BK Hissingen in 29th. Ian Reid, Neeps versus Swedes, he's always there, isn't he? He's 26th at the moment. Team Hart, Sam Hart, 24th. So the important title race, though, is certainly between Meatman Soccer and JF Football at this moment in time. I'm coming for you, my friend. And I was pretty happy with my week. Defensively, Ekdal scored, but I'm disappointed with my strikers this week. And also, Otieno was my captain, which he got taken off against Kalmar. So we are going to talk about pretty much most of these games, aren't we? I mean, should we start with the sort of title race?
But that you're not ahead of me still after 20 rounds is remarkable, by the way, considering you're the expert. So you're shockingly low compared to where you should be. So
it's expected points, though, isn't it?
High expectations I'm putting on you. There's a really interesting name at number 51, Lone Wolf. If you are Lone Wolf, get in touch with us. That's a great name and a great team name as well. So let's get straight into the action. The title race is really hotting up. We know, the last time we did an episode, it was a 4-way battle. Would you say now it's become a 3-way battle, Jonathan?
Yeah, just before we end that on fantasy, the question is, should I be ahead of you, or are you learning and basking in my wisdom every week on this podcast? You know what I mean? So it's kind of you could split that 2 ways, couldn't you? Really, but 20 games in, we're really starting to see the title race now. It's almost reminiscent to me of the 2019 title race. This is looking like a potential 3-way battle again. I think it was even a 4-way battle that year, wasn't it? I mean, it was incredible that season. I don't think we're gonna top that. We may do, but we are looking at potentially going to be a very, very tight race. I see a lot of qualities in all 3 teams at the top of this moment in time. I mean, just to run it down, we got after 20 games, we've got Djurgården 41 points plus 17 goal difference, top of the table. AIK exactly the same record, played 12, drawn 5, lost 3. 41 points plus 14, slightly fewer goals, but with a better defensive record. And then 3 points behind them, the champions Malmö FF, 20 games played, 11-1, 5 draws, 4 defeats. And they're the top scorers in the league. So they've got plus 17 goal difference, but have conceded a lot more, 23 as well. So just below them as well, if you want to include them, I'm not sure you can include them. We'll talk about their game in a minute, but Elfsborg, 36 points. So they're 5 points off the top at the moment. It's looking very tasty at this moment in time. I think the one thing you can conclude, Steve, just from the games, even this midweek round, I've been watching, I've watched as many games as I can this midweek round. In fact, I think that we're going to have a very close race, to be honest. I think there's not much between Djurgården, AIK and Malmö. It's really going to be a case of who dares wins, who blinks first, and that kind of thing, because if we look at the midweek games at this moment in time, we've got Elfsborg 0, Malmö 1 yesterday. Malmö came up with a sort of I don't want to say they're lucky, but how can you not call someone lucky when a team has 0 shots on target and wins 1-0? An own goal, and they were on the ropes against Elfsborg for some spells of that game, Malmö, I think, and they showed real character. We'll talk about them in a minute to get the 3 points. AIK, who have pulled out an 89th minute equaliser at Kalmar to get a point, which is a tough place to go, and we will talk about that in a minute as well. But that's kept them, just level with Djurgården, and then Djurgården themselves, look comfortable against Degerfors in midweek. You thought they were going to rack up an easy win. Degerfors came back, but Djurgården got the points with a 3-2 win. A little bit of controversy in that game, which we may talk about. But yes, really, all 3 games of the top were quite exciting. And at this moment in time, it's paper thin, Steve. It's quite hard to predict a winner.
Yeah, no one's really bossing it right now, are they? There's drop points everywhere. No one in that top. In fact, no one in the whole league has won more than 2 games in a row on current form, which is quite remarkable. There's usually someone at least in unbelievable form, isn't there? But Malmö. Let's first of all start with the round before the weekend. Östersunds beat Elfsborg 3-1. That, for me, that was a shock result, and that might be the result that's almost knocked Elfsborg out of the title race now. You can't be losing against Östersunds, can you? And then obviously Malmö beating them 1-0 was a big result. You said it was quite a tight game, probably a draw affair, would you say, rather than Malmö nicking it? But maybe that's where the title experience and the extra bit of quality comes, to the top there for Malmö.
Yeah, well, firstly, you bang on. You can't be losing against Östersunds if you want to win the title, and I think Elfsborg fans will be really disappointed with that. That's really. I saw a few fans commenting this evening, sort of on Twitter and things like that, saying that that maybe a bit of a lifeline with some of the other results. Obviously, Malmo won, Djurgården won was at the weekend as well. And then, of course, AIK have dropped points this round. So, maybe they can still feel they're just about in it. But I think if you look at the two defeats, if they got 4 points, which you'd expect them to get, really, I mean, in the balance of kind of how they played against Malmo, you'd expect they would have been, a point would have been probably about fair. And then in terms of, they should be beating the bottom of the league side, Östersunds. They've only won 3 games all season, Östersunds. They'd only won 2 games before that all season. So, if you'd add 4 points to that tally, they'd be well in it, 1 point behind. 5 points now with 10 games remaining with 3 very good teams. You start to wonder that, was this the week? Maybe they've fallen out of it. They have got some big games to come, but I personally don't think they're going to have enough, and I think this week kind of proved it. What it proved about Malmo is that they've got the ability to get the job done, because this was a game where I did not think they were going to get a win out of this Malmo. To be honest, the more the game went on, you kind of started feeling that Elfsborg will get something that they. I'm not going to say they deserve to win, because in football, my philosophy on football is whoever wins. You know what I mean? And if you can't put the ball in the net, then that's the end of it. But really, they did play quite well. Missed big chances. They had the ball in the back of the net, had a goal disallowed for a Per Frick foul. Malmo picked up quite a bad injury, Felix Bejimo, and you just had the sense that maybe Malmo weren't going to be able to hang on in this game. You didn't really see where the goals were coming from. Berman Savic was quite poor. Kolat, obviously, who I've written about on Y Scout, he missed quite an easy chance towards the end, and nothing just really was clicking for Malmo. But they did enough to get the job done, and it was a bit of an own goal, bit of a kind of freak own goal, and that was it really. I mean, Elfsborg, one of their players at the end of the game when he got taken off, Andre Roma, who by the way played one pass that was like the Pogba De Bruyne-esque, unbelievable through ball at one point in the match. Centre midfielder, and he walked off the pitch when he was subbed, and he started booting the advertising board like Tamuri Ketsbaya. He was fuming at kind of just not being subbed off, but just how frustrated about losing. And that was the sense really for Elfsborg. You could tell they were gutted about this result, and they deserve more, I think, to be honest. But the thing with Malmo is that's that sort of that's what champions do, isn't it? They get those 1-0 wins in those big away games that even if you're not doing what you need to do, even if you're not on it, you find a way to win. And it really showed the difference between sort of champions and sort of wannabe champions. So, big win for Malmo.
Yeah, they're on 38 points. The Djurgården and AIK are on 41 points each. And I'm just looking at AIK's fixtures now, and I feel like they almost need a cushion, because the next match is against Degerfors away, which should be a bit of a free hit, you would think. After that, the next 4 games for AIK, they got Djurgården at home in the Stockholm derby. Then they go to Hammarby in another derby. Then they're home to Norrköping, who are no mugs at all, against their old manager. And then they go to Malmo. The finish is a lot more straightforward. But them 4 games is going to be a lot. It's going to be massive for AIK. But they have been dropping points recently. 0-0 against Mjällby, 1-1 draw against Kalmar. I know they come from behind to get something there. It's not a shambolic result with either of them 2 draws, but are those matches they needed to be winning, really, if they really want to win the gold medal?
Yeah, well, they beat IFK Göteborg on the Monday. Who doesn't these days? Got a quite comfortable win there. They really enjoyed that game, by the way. The fans were loving it. It was kind of like they were singing songs in the terraces saying IFK are going to the Superettan, and they really kind of they put a good run together in that game. But the game against Kalmar, they've got out of jail there, to be honest. Just a quick look at the stats. 54% possession from Kalmar. It felt like 70% possession, to be honest, at times. 1.35 xG versus 1.14. 14 shots, 5 on target. I mean, AIK also managed 13 shots, so they did have a fair amount of shots. But Kalmar really rustled them in this game. I was really, really impressed. Anyone who watched this game tonight, will come away with it just sort of really, really impressed with Kalmar. Now, me, Steve, I don't exaggerate too much. I try not to exaggerate too much, but honestly, if you go and see the first goal, the passing sequence for this goal, I honestly think that you could put Henrik Rydström at FC Barcelona and he'd probably be an upgrade on the current manager. You know, the ability. No, seriously, I thought about this quite deeply, and I was like, should I say this or not? The ability to transfer Sirius's passing game last season to Kalmar this season with a completely different team in such a short space of time is nothing short of remarkable. I have to say, you know, they're top of the league in terms of possession for Allsvenskan. You know, his Sirius team was one of the best passing teams in the league as well last season. This is no fluke what he's doing. His ability, you know, the manager's ability to kind of build this passing unit. 57% ball possession average this season, and they really outplayed AIK at times. AIK were kind of going for more of a sort of defending counter, you know, looking for fast breaks. I was quite impressed with Zach Elbuzedi. I thought he looked quite good. And his hairband looked like a sort of Allsvenskan's Grealish at some point in the way he tries to play the game, quite direct, likes to dribble. But, you know, Kalmar were just rustling them, and you were waiting for a goal. You were just thinking, when's the goal coming? And eventually it came a really nice passing sequence, like I say, Oliver Berg getting on the end of a cross. And you thought to yourself, wow, this is, you know, Kalmar are going to do it. And it wouldn't have been unfair. But then, you know, again, we talk about sort of what makes a champion, and AIK, that resilience. 89th minute, Nabil Bahoui from a corner. He was just there to tuck it in. I think it was the second phase. Like, I think it was flicked on, and he just kind of got his, you know, just got his boot on the end of it in the sort of close to the 6-yard box, poked it home, and you know, that's what kind of wannabe champions do. I even felt with 4 minutes stoppage time, they might go on and win it. AIK, you know, they're that sort of team in a sense. You know, defensively they were a bit shaky at times. I think Nordfeldt's going to be quite an important player for them. The goalkeeper. Former Swansea man. I think he's a player. He's a sort of, you know, they fixed their keeper issues now. He made some big saves, I thought. You know, Niels Froling missed a big chance, for example. And, you know, all in all, you know, point was maybe a fair result, but I think honestly, I think Kalmar would have felt happy if they'd won that game. And I think AIK maybe got out of jail a little bit. But, you know, I saw a tweet earlier that said from an AIK fan, which said this is the best team we've played all season. And that's really sums up the feeling about Kalmar. You know, that possession style. You know, if you've got Barcelona playing Gerard Piqué out front at the moment, then you know, maybe you need to look to Kalmar to re-get that Pep style passing game.
Yeah, I know you've been pretty impressed with them all season, really, Kalmar, and they seem like awkward opposition for anyone at the top of that table or down the bottom in these points as well. Because Kalmar are kind of in no man's land right now. 31 points in 7th place. There's no real pressure on them, is there? They're enjoying their football, and you know, I wouldn't want to be playing a side like that right now. And probably a good point for AIK, you would say. Big games to then coming up soon. Djurgården, the 1-1 draw against Malmo, which is a good result for them. They seem to do well against Malmo, don't they? I know the year they won the title, they got good results. Against Malmo, but I mean, in terms of AIK, you know, do you think they've got the enough about them to win the title?
Yeah, I think they do. Yeah, I think they can win the title. What I quite like about them is I think they are quite resilient. I think they are quite good, quite strong going forward. Nabil Bahouy's been in really good form. The Goitom Stefanelli kind of partnership, I'm not quite sure about that. Has it got the amount of goals that, say, you know, a Malmo has in sort of Kolak, Savic? Has it got the same amount of goals as, say, you know, Djurgården do with their forwards? Not entirely sure, but we will. You know, defensively, they got the best defensive record in the league. You know, if you look at it, they've scored 10 less goals than Malmo. You know, so. Can they get that balance right? It's almost a bit like Rickard Norling's title-winning side, isn't it? They're sort of defense first in terms of how they approach the game. You know, very solid. They have started to sort that back line out. Like I mentioned, they needed a keeper. They've got a keeper. The likes of Milosevic and Papagiannopoulos, I think, are quite solid. Otieno has been in really good form. He's a good player. The Kenyan left back. So, well. I think they can win a title, yeah. You know, they're level on points. They've got a lot of confidence. They do have tough games to come, though, and I think it's going to be how they perform, you know, in the weeks to come, because, you know, they haven't lost a game since July at Häcken. Only lost 3 all season, obviously 3 away games. But they've got some tough away games coming. They've got Hammarby away, Malmo away, Elfsborg away. So can they ride those games? That will be where it's decided. And of course, a couple of weeks' time, we've got another Stockholm derby. In fact, they've got back-to-back Stockholm derbies, Djurgården and then Hammarby after the international break. So, we'll learn a lot about them after the next 3 games, I think.
Unfortunately, on a more tragic note, there was some very bad news, I do believe, prior to the game, AIK's most recent game, Jonathan.
Yeah, really sad news. I think we have to mention it. The club put out an announcement just after the game finished, basically announcing that two AIK fans sadly passed away on their way to the Kalmar game. I think the attendance was about 4,200, 4,300-ish, and obviously it was too short. 2 fans sadly made their way to the game and didn't make it. I think there was a road accident, and really, really tragic news, to be honest. So obviously from the Nordic Football Podcast, our thoughts are with the families and the victims and everything like that. It's really, really sad to go to a game and not make it. So our thoughts are with those 2 AIK fans and everyone surrounding the club at this time.
Terrible news, absolutely terrible news. Rest in peace. As I say, horrific. It's just horrible that. But Djurgården then. So they got the 1-0 draw against Malmo. They backed it up with a win against Degerfors, which, most people expect them to get that result. But it was done in difficult circumstances, Jonathan. 3-2. But there's quite a lot to tell from this game, isn't there? Yeah,
this was a fun game. And Steve, you know me, I like a bit of needle in my football. And if you wanted needle, you certainly had it in this Degerfors Djurgården game. It was the return of the big Serbian Nikola Djurdjic. He was back at his former home / former club, obviously Tele2 Arena. He was a former Hammarby player, and he had a bit of a point to prove. Did Djurdjic? He obviously, being a Hammarby player, he's not well liked by Djurgården because of the Stockholm rivalry. And Steve, in football, some people say football's become a bit stale, become a bit sterile. You can't say what you want or whatever. Like maybe it's a society, everyone's diplomatic. Well, I'll tell you who's not diplomatic, Steve. Nikola Djurdjic, because here is his comments about Djurgården. I hate them. I absolutely hate them. This is public comments that he made. So he wasn't mincing his words about this game. He got booed basically every single time he touched the ball because he left Hammarby, went to China, didn't quite work out for him, and now he's back at Degerfors. He's a bit getting on in years now. He's a decent player, decent forward. He's always had that bit of needle about him. He's always come out with comments. He's not someone who minces his words, which I quite like. Obviously, some people don't like it, but he said, I absolutely hate them. It's always fun to play against them because I hate them. My best memory in Sweden is beating them 2-1 in the derby. And I also like that hatred. I love it. I love being booed by the fans. I enjoyed it. It motivated me. I've played a few games in Serbia like this, but the hatred I feel from Djurgården fans, I've never felt anywhere else, which is, I love that. I think football needs that kind of thing. I don't think as long as it's sort of, doesn't cross any borders, I don't think there's anything wrong with a bit of like friendly banter rivalry in that sense. But anyway, Djurgården went 2-0 up. Hamar Ekdal's flying at the moment, and then Magnus Eriksson. Personally, I think the goalkeeper, who's on loan from Tottenham, by the way, Alfie Whiteman, I think he should have done a little bit better with the Eriksson goal, long range effort. So it was 2-0, cruising. You thought game over, but Djurdjic popped up with 2 goals. The hated man. So first one he took it well, and then the second one he peels off very well. And finishes really well, and then he just runs to the fans and sort of cups his ears and shrugging his shoulders, and everyone's booing him. And it's for me, that's what football's all about with fans. I love it. So he said, football's about passion and respect, and that's how it is. He thought maybe he'd sneak the point and help against the team that he hates so much, but no, not in the end. There was another goal, came back, and Radetinac was the hero in the end. And so that was kind of it for Djurdjic. But he diplomatic as always, mate. He came out after the game and said, "It's a real shame we lost to a shit team."
Brilliant. I mean, yeah, he's I bet the fans were just hating him scoring 2 goals there. But I mean, fair play to him. He says it how it is, isn't he? And there's no point in lying about such matters sometimes, is there? But I mean, big win for Djurgården fundamentally. They've got a decent run of if they can get through that derby game, which is a big if. We know they generally suck in derbies, don't they? But if they can get, say, just a point out of that, they've got a reasonable run of fixtures after it. And, a massive goal, if they'd dropped points there, then it would have been a lot of question marks, wouldn't they? So they're showing their backbone as well. All, then top 3 have all shown plenty of bottle in the last week or two.
Yeah, and George's point was when he said called Djurgården the S word, as I just mentioned there. He said that they were the better. He felt that Degerfors were the better team, but they're not in great form at all at the moment, and they'll feel hard done by because there was a big controversy after in this game at 3-2. The player who's replaced Witry, Alex von Witry, who's left obviously is Leo Kornic. He started to get some game time. I know you talked about him on a recent episode when you interviewed, I think it was the Stabæk manager. He made his first start for Djurgården in this game, first league start, and towards the end of the game there was a cross that came in, and it kind of bounced off his arm, and there was a massive call for a penalty. Probably should have been a penalty, to be honest. I think if VAR was in Allsvenskan, that might have been a penalty. So a lot of fans, especially of Malmo and AIK, were not happy about that. Maybe got away with one on their diff. But you're right. It's a sign of champions, isn't it? Getting those wins. You go 2-0 up, you 2-2, then 3-2. That's what you got to do to win titles, and all 3 of them are sort of stepping up when they need to. And it will, with 10 games left. Let's see what they can do. But for Degerfors, Steve, we've just got to quickly touch on Degerfors. I mean, that is a bit of a nightmare.
There's a lot of trouble here for Degerfors because I'm just looking at their form. They've lost 9 of their last 11 league games. 5 consecutive defeats. At the start of the season, they kind of surprised a few people with some decent results. They beat Djurgården early on in the season, for example, beat IFK, had a win against Häcken. What is going wrong there at Degerfors? They seem to be, there's a few teams out of form, admittedly, down there, but they are not even getting draws at the moment, Jonathan. What is going wrong? Can they sort it out?
Yeah, they're not getting draws. They're not getting any points. Worst defensive record in the league, conceding 2 goals per game, pretty much average, more or less 38 goals conceded in 20 games. They started the season quite well. I can't forget our 3-4-3 episode, which fans can, listeners can go back and have a listen to, a tactical analysis we did. We praised Degerfors' kind of 3-4-3 style, but it's all gone horribly wrong, really, since the second half of the season, really, since July. Only 2 wins since July. Only 3 games. There's only 3 games they haven't lost basically since July, and they've lost 5 in a row. They've lost 9 of their last sort of 11 games, I think it is. So they're really tanking at the moment, Steve. I worry about them. I think they might go down. Actually, I think things are looking very grim for them. The next game's AIK at home. Then they've got Varberg away, who are having a good season, by the way. Varberg, they've been quite good. And they've got some tough games to come. They've got Elfsborg, they've got Häcken away, they've got Hammarby, Norrköping, Östersund's away on the final day, which, who knows, by then maybe both could be down. But just I think the biggest problem is, Steve, in terms of analysis and that, just a simple fact is they got the worst expected goals against in Allsvenskan by quite some distance. 42.96 xG, which is way worse than, say, for example, Östersund, who are second bottom. So they're just very, very leaky, that style. I'm not sure they have the quality at the back. I think losing Ismail Diawara is a massive loss as well, the goalkeeper, to Malmo, of course. He was a key man for them. He was really good. And I just think they probably haven't quite replaced his presence. So yeah, things aren't looking great for them. So you have to say they're got to buck up their ideas quick, or because they're really just tanking at this moment in time. They're in the sort of relegation playoff at this moment in time. So the head's just above water. But if you look at Örebro's recent result, and even with Östersund's, picking up a win, the walls are closing in a bit on Degerfors.
What I like about them, though, I think they've probably got a goal in them, and don't underestimate goals in football. They can win you football games. I mean, I look at some of the other teams down there. There's a couple of very, very boring sides. Mjällby have had 3 consecutive 0-0s. We know what Halmstad are like. They're not that great for a goal either. It's all well and good knocking these, racking these draws together, and points do help, but a win is worth its weight in gold. So in this relegation battle, Östersunds, they did have that win recently, but I think let's just say they're probably gone. Of the other positions down there, would you still think that, Örebro perhaps, or Degerfors, who might pick up the odd win here and there but lose a lot? How does that contrast to these sort of Mjällby, Halmstad sort of teams who they get the 0-0s in here but they don't win many?
Well, we got it. I mean, I think Halmstad, there's a case to make for Halmstad being my favourite team of this season.
Really?
I don't think I've ever. I mean, not in terms of to watch, definitely, but just in terms of their, teams that just stick to a philosophy. It's a bit like Burnley, or Stoke. Like, I know a lot of fans sort of, or pundits and stuff in the media, they tend to pick teams that they just hate and they say this and that. But I like teams, Steve, that just, if they have a playing style and philosophy and they stick to it, I quite like that. I don't care what it is, because you don't want I don't want every single team in the league to be trying to play tiki-taka, if you know what I mean. You want different styles, you want different opinions, philosophies, clashes. I think that's part of what makes football exciting, So Halmstad's just relentless commitment to being as boring as they can, and just grinding out games is quite admirable, to be honest. 13 goals scored in 20 games and 17 conceded. I mean, Mjällby's only just conceded 2 more, in fairness to them, but that is outrageous. I think for a newly promoted side to have the joint second best defensive record in the league. I mean, that is Djurgården. That's the best, same as Djurgården defensive record. That to me, that's incredible after 20 games for a newly promoted team. They don't know how to score goals if their life depended on it. Of course, with 13, it's a ridiculously low number of goals scored in a season. I don't think they even care about scoring goals, to be honest. I think they've got no interest in really sort of scoring. They in terms of total shots, they're just not interested, are they? They're one of the lowest, I think, for total shots, I think.
I mean, I'll give you some stats here on over-under. 17 out of 20 of their games have ended under 2.5 goals. And two of their overs have actually been against the same team, Norrköping. So goodness knows what Norrköping, how they managed to get them sucked into this sort of overmatch twice is remarkable for Norrköping. But Halmstad, I mean, Mjällby here, 16 out of 20 matches are ended under 2.5 goals. This is like French football. Worse. This is worse than some teams that I've known in France down the years that end up with incredible unders. It's horrific. I mean, there's a guy I know who's a regular on my Twitch channel, a decent fella, but he loves defensive football. We always have this little joke because he's not actually a Burnley fan, but he loves the way Burnley play football. He always tries to try and get me to play defensive football on Football Manager on stream because he loves to see that sort of thing. And I can tell you now, he would bloody orgasm over Halmstad and Mjällby. It's remarkable. I mean, how they keep doing it. But is it going to be enough for them to survive?
I think it will be. Yeah. I mean, I think they'll stay up. I think they'll definitely stay up, to be honest. They've got the lowest challenge intensity in the league. 5.1 duels, tackles, and interceptions per minute of opponent's possession. PPDA, passes per defensive action. That kind of how many passes basically per action defensively. So that basically gauges pressing, to be honest, the second bottom of the league for it. They allow 14.81 passes per defensive action. They got no interest. You keep the ball all you want. Do what you want with it. Well, you can pass it around all you want. We're just going to sit here in 2 banks of 4 and we're going to just clear every chance we can. Aerial duels, we're going to just clear everything in the air. The third best in the league for aerial duels, behind Mjällby and Varberg. You do what you want in possession. We couldn't care less, basically, is their message. You know what I mean? And I quite like it. I think that's it's refreshing. I don't think I'd want a season ticket to watch that. I'll be honest.
Bet you wouldn't. Bloody hell.
But in terms of the philosophy and the style of play, it's probably going to keep them in the league. And at the end of the day, if you're a newly promoted side, that's all you want, really, to be honest. So, football, you can slice it in different ways, can't you? They're not that actually bad for passes in the box. For touches in the box per 90. they're about mid-table to be honest, 19 per 90 minutes, if that makes sense. So they do get into the box, they do create, but it's just they're very rugged in their determinations and not concede goals. And to sit defensively in that bank of those two banks of four, and they've got very good defenders, Steve, as well. I think that's a key difference between, say, them and a Degerfors. They're actually very good defensively. The likes of Baffo, they have some good defenders, Steve, to be honest. So all in all, good luck to Halmstad. I quite like their style.
Yeah, 2018 last match of the Eliteserien. Bodø/Glimt had just come up that season, and they had to get a result on the last day of the season to stay up. And now look where they are. So I don't blame them. First season back up, you've got to try and survive, haven't you? So, and then kick on from there. So fair play. If it works, it works for them. Whilst we are talking about the bottom and end of the table, just a quick glance over. Östersunds did get a rare victory, 3-1 against Elfsborg, bit of a shocker. Then they lost to Örebro, again a rare win for Örebro. Blair Turgott with a hat-trick against Elfsborg, rather a bit of a shock result.
Yeah, well, that was a massive shock. I couldn't actually believe it. They've got a new manager. He's come in and he's obviously me and you, Steve, by now we got quite a lot of contacts, haven't we, at Östersunds, who've either been there or passed through it. Former people who've been there at the club. The reports I get on the new manager is that he's a very good manager, to be honest. So I think he will go in there and sort of clear things up a little bit. And obviously, but nobody expected us to beat Elfsborg. I don't think that was an incredible result, to be honest. I'd written it off. It's a good thing we didn't do a bonus pod, because that would have been my absolute banker. But really sad for them not to be able to follow it up, because the Örebro Östersunds game, which I caught some of that. That was like a relegation 6-pointer, and they've lost that 2-0. Nordin Gerzic managed to get a very late goal, and that could, although they managed to beat Elfsborg to give themselves a lifeline, you could argue the Örebro game was actually more important to win. So Örebro, just that extra 3 points could be fatal for them, to be honest, in their attempts to stay up. So I think tough result really, especially being so late in the game. They look like they've done enough, and then sort of 84th and 95th minute goals. Kind of a bit of a killer, really. So, but a big win for Örebro. We've not talked about them much this season. There's not been too much to say about them, to be honest. But yeah, a good result.
Yeah, all to play for down the bottom there. Now, on our itinerary here, there is listed fans versus police, which rather intrigues me, Jonathan. Enlighten us more what's been going on there.
Yeah, save Allsvenskan. That is save Swedish football. That is the big call this week. A very kind of strange situation, basically. I've been trying to get my head around this because I couldn't really understand it. There was a clip from the Sirius Norrköping game which went viral, actually. And I was kind of it was kind of loads of flares, and anyone who watches Swedish football, you'll be familiar with the flares and the kind of smoke bombs and that kind of thing. It's part of the game, really. But what actually happened is, I think police basically came out and said that there's going to be no one can use any pyrotechnics and no one can carry any flags into this Sirius Norrköping game. And when that happened, basically people were fuming about it. The statement came out from Sirius. They actually put an official club statement out, kind of disagreeing with the action, saying it was too heavy-handed. And so basically, there's this kind of, to be honest, Steve, it's a long running thing. The police don't like the Swedish police don't seem to like, and the authorities in Sweden, they don't seem to like these kind of banners and these flares and things like that. I suppose pyrotechnics is kind of not allowed in stadiums, but it's kind of what makes Swedish football what it is, to be honest. It's such a massive part of it. And there's always been this sort of just slow running kind of tension, really, little things like that, fans getting banned or, things getting taken down, people getting turned away from the stadiums. And I remember even when I was there was kind of this just bubbling tension about it, kind of people against the police. And so basically Sirius kind of announced that the police wouldn't allow them to have any banners, flares or anything in the game. But as you'll see from the video, which went viral, I don't think anyone listened to that, because there was loads of flares. People, they really went wild. They even held up a banner, the players, Steve, before the match, kind of, like pre-kickoff, almost like Champions League when you exchange flags or whatever. they held up a sign saying "Save Swedish football." Famous Swedish musicians and things like that have been tweeting about it, saying "Save Swedish football." People are really upset about this, and all around the grounds this last sort of couple of days, there's been people kind of like using flares or holding banners up. There was a banner at the AIK game saying, "I think save Swedish football," and that's kind of the thing. The police authority came out and said, "Our responsibility is to maintain public order and security in society, and we therefore need to limit the use of so-called Olympic flags at the Sirius Norrköping game." The argument is basically, Steve, that a lot of fans kind of hide their pyrotechnics and that kind of thing behind the banners, you know what I mean, and kind of sneak them in. And so they wanted to blanket ban everything, but obviously fans got very upset about that. And it's just kind of like a bit of an ugly situation, really. And people kind of feel like, well, we've had no fans for so long. What's so bad about all this? It's just a bit of harmless fun. Depends where you sit on that one. You know, I don't know exactly where I stand, because obviously safety is quite important. Some games you do get in Allsvenskan where it's like you can barely see because of the amount of smoke, and you know, maybe is that a safety issue? Something to think about. But at the same time, it's like pie and mash and fish and chips in English. It's that ingrained in the culture of Swedish football. So very delicate balance, and I think the feeling is police aren't really kind of very they're too heavy-handed on this. They're not really kind of that diplomatic. So it's a situation that's going to continue to run. But yeah, save Swedish football's been the call this week, really.
Yeah, the fans probably need to let off a bit of steam, to be honest, as well, don't they? After the events that have gone on in the last 18 months across the world. So
they're not just letting off steam; they're letting off sort of 10 tons of smoke at there sometimes, mate. So it's kind of like it's more than steam for sure. But no, I know what you mean.
So looking ahead to the weekend, we've got. I'll just read out the fixtures. Actually, we've got one match on Saturday this week: Malmö against Örebro. 3 games on Sunday: Mjällby, Elfsborg, Östersund, Djurgården, and Häcken against Hammarby. Norrköping, Varberg as well for Sunday. 3 matches on Monday: Degerfors, AIK, Halmstad, Sirius, and the final game on Monday: IFK Göteborg against Kalmar. Now, that last match there, IFK. I feel like every season, I said this off air, didn't I? Feels like with about 10 games to go, since we've been doing the Nordic football podcast, IFK Göteborg are seemingly in some sort of crisis or in trouble. Like, they're 4 points clear of the relegation zone. You know, it's not been a great year for them. You know, how has Mickey Starr been getting on since he came in? I feel like I've probably asked you this way too often. But yet another year, yet another crisis for IFK in sort of around September time. Yeah,
I mean, AIK dismantled them and they were singing goodbye, see you in the Superettan. They were really taunting them, rubbing it in. You know, they think that they're sort of IFK are one of the big boys, so they like to think that they're equals to AIK and those lot. But it's not played out in the last few years. You know, I'm almost tired of talking about it in a way. But we can't ignore it because they got battered by Hammarby this evening. 3-0, 1.77 XG to 0.77, 16 shots. IFK didn't manage a single shot on target in this game. And it just sums it all up. I mean, listen, having lived in Gothenburg, there was a period of time where I was quite sympathetic to IFK because I know people there and I like people there, and kind of I wanted to like them, if that makes sense. I wanted them to. I didn't want to be too harsh on them, but I've got to say it, Steve. They're a joke at this moment in time. The club. I mean, they're just like I don't want to upset anybody, but they are a joke. They don't know what they're doing in terms of what are they supposed to be as a football club. They don't know what they're doing. You know, there was the years where they kind of had the excuse of the finances, and like you can understand that because finances do dictate things. But they've sold quite a lot of players and made money. You know, Alassane Yusuf's gone. They've sold so many players in the last sort of 2-3 seasons that surely they've got enough money to at least be as good as, say, a Kalmar or a Varberg Boys for crying out loud. I mean, they're 5 points behind Varberg Boys. They're like the tiny side that's quite near them. It's like almost it's like a derby in a way. To be 5 points behind Varberg Boys is an embarrassment for IFK Göteborg. It is a genuine embarrassment. When you look at the side, Steve, they've got 35-year-olds in the team. They've got, I think they had 4 34 to 35-year-olds in their previous game before the Hammarby game. You've got Marcus Berg up front, 35. You've got Simon Tern, obviously he's 29. We're getting on a bit now, in fairness to him. You've got Gustas Svensson, 34 years old. Bjarmir, 35 years old. You've got all these players sort of coming back to play for EF but then at the same time, they're trying to blood through academy youngsters. Like, what do the club want? What are they trying to do? Usually I keep quite diplomatic about EF but you have to call it as you see it. To be honest, it is. I think it's embarrassing for the club. I think the fans are embarrassed. I think even the people who work at the club probably, must be feeling a little bit of embarrassment at this moment in time because it just seems to be getting worse and worse and worse, Steve. And I think what the big frustration is. I'd like to see them just go down and get relegated to Super Essen in a way. Get out of your system, rebuild. Take your medicine and sort of come back another season. But the problem is that they'll never go down because there's always going to be 3 worse teams than them, if that makes sense. No matter how bad they are, they can't be that bad to say a team like a Degerfors or an Östersunds who are in complete crisis, if that makes sense. You've got to be so bad to go down if you're a big club in Allsvenskan, if that makes sense, in recent years. And I kind of want them to go down now and just get out of your system, move on from there and go, because they probably need that if you know what I mean. There's too many old players coming back for a heyday. They've got the oldest average age in Allsvenskan. I just don't really know what they're doing as a club at the moment, and it's a shame.
You lived in Gothenburg for a substantial period of time. I know you've almost got a soft spot for the city as a whole, and you've had links with all the clubs in that city. Does it frustrate you personally to see a club like IFK, who are historically a very big club, or still are now? How embarrassing is this?
Well, I'll tell you what, Steve. The best comparison I can make for an English context, for those who might not know, those who might not know about Swedish football, I would compare, and this is the reason why I say they should just get relegated. I would compare them to like sort of Aston Villa. Now, Aston Villa, European Cup winners, massive club. If you really look at English football in terms of context of history, EFK probably bigger actually. If you look at the Aston Villa comparatively, they're like a Manchester United or a Liverpool of Swedish football. They're massive. But remember all those years where Villa were just sort of so bad, and then eventually one year they got relegated and they flushed everything out of their system, got rid of all the nonsense, got rid of so many directors, and they really sort of got to the bottom of their issues. Grealish emerged. They had that seasons in the Championship and that kind of thing. Came back, and now they've got a really good philosophy behind the scenes. They're really on it in terms of recruitment. They know where they're going. They've got a fantastic academy, Villa now, probably one of the best academies in England in terms of their academy recruitment. And they can be Villa again, if that makes sense. EFK, that's what I feel needs to happen now, because every year it's like they do badly, but then it's like, well, we'll get rid of a few people, they'll sack the manager, bring in someone different. He comes with a different philosophy. They've had the Gifsons sort of tiki-taka style. They've had Roland Nielsen, didn't work. They've had the old heads. They've had the young heads. They've had the project to win the league. That's why the AIK fans were laughing at them, was because, people are saying at the moment, the only league you're going to win is Super Etten. And I just, like you say, for Swedish for EFK Göteborg I can't stress it enough. To be behind Varberg boys in the league is an absolute embarrassment for the club. So if they were to finish behind Varberg, to me, that is like Varberg are considered within Gothenburg as like a sort of tiny club down the road, if you know what I mean. If you look at the stadium at Varberg, it's tiny. Yeah. It's a total embarrassment for a team with so many championships as EFK, such an institution, to finish behind them. And that's why I sort of feel like they need to take their medicine before they really get this out of the system, because they're sort of club that every year kind of 3 or 4 34-year-olds say, I'm going to go back to EFK and relive the heyday. But, their pressing isn't too bad if you look at the pressing stats. But what as a football club do they bring to the league at this moment in time in terms of what's their philosophy? Third lowest number of shots per 90 in the league total. I mean, they've had one more shot this season than Varberg boys. That is just, honestly, they've one less shot than Halmstad, for crying out loud. What are they doing? Örebro are creating more than them. I just don't. Yeah, not to dwell the point a bit, but they're going nowhere.
You know what? I'm genuinely thinking when the new Football Manager game comes out in about a month, I'm genuinely thinking about doing them on one of my Twitch saves. I was actually going to call it Geriatric Gothenburg, where I can only sign players over like 33 years old, because that seems to be their genuine policy in real life right now. So,
but the thing is, Steve, that's part of the problem is that they've got the money. You know, look at I can't remember his name now. From Napoli, Marek Hamsik. What happened there? You know, it was big fanfare. He turned up for 6 weeks. He got himself fit for the Euros, and as soon as the Euros ended, he was like, "Right, I'm off. See you later. I'm going to Turkey." You know, they're treated like sort of like a Texas diner at 3 a.m. in the morning. You know, you come in, you get your burger and whatever else you need. You know, you stop off and then you leave. You know, kind of like a petrol station, if you know what I mean. Like people come for a big payday. But they're clearly past it, and then they take the money and they're off. And I think that, don't get me wrong, they're good players, but they don't fit into a playing style or a philosophy. And I know partly the finances dictate that because they have to sell. But then in that case, why spend all this money on these big players? If they were to go to the Superettan, they're not going to be able to afford those kind of players. And maybe that would flush it out. They can focus on their really good academy and maybe just organically come back. But at this moment in time, it's a real... it is a real club going nowhere, and it pains me to say that because, you know, I think they're a great institution, IFK Göteborg, and I like the club, and I like a lot of people who are there. So, you know, I hope it's not taken too harshly, but they're going nowhere.
Strong words indeed from you, Jonathan. There, I think we'll leave it there after that sort of outburst almost, but interesting stuff.
Yeah. Coming up in part 2, we will talk about Norway, and we will look at the cup in Norway, which been a few shock results, hasn't there, Steve? Which I'm going to let you get your teeth into. But see you in part 2. Welcome to part 2 of this episode of the Nordic Football Podcast. We're back, and it's going to be a short, brief Norwegian section this because we've had a cup round, and you know, if anyone knows Meat Man Soccer, you know, cups aren't really necessarily his thing, are they? And we have had a round in Eliteserien as well, but we do have a bumper. We do have a major guest coming on next week, which we're quite excited about. And so we're going to have next week a kind of Norway-only probably podcast. So for this sort of section, we're just going to briefly touch on the cup results and maybe just one or two pointers on the league. So what I'll do is I'm just going to read you the results from the weekend just gone. This was the 18th of September and 19th of September. So we had Kristiansund BK 3, my boys, Haugesund 2, Odd 2, Lillestrøm 3, Mjøndalen 1, Sandefjord 1 on the Sunday, Sarpsborg 08 1, Rosenborg 3, Vålerenga 1, Molde 1, Viking 1, Bodø/Glimt 3, and Tromsø 1, Brann 1. So quite a few draws there, weren't there, Steve? A lot of not every single team scored in the league, which is quite interesting. And it hasn't. I mean, it's not majorly affected the table, has it? But what's your, did you have any takeaways from that round? Is there anything kind of you want to touch on that's changed, if that makes sense? Because it's we've got 19 games played now. We're coming up to the 20th game, and then we'll look at the league in more detail. But did anything catch your eye from that week?
Well, I tweeted at one point in running that Rosenborg were only 2 points off the title at one stage on Sunday, with the resources they were, which would have been pretty damn incredible, actually. But Molde come back to get a draw, and Bodø/Glimt came from behind to beat Viking 3-1. Both sides showing a bit of backbone, really. Bodø/Glimt, recently they've not necessarily been at their best, but they've been finding a way to get results in general. And I think fair play to that. But yeah, Rosenborg have been in some good form. I think they've won something like 5 of the last 6. And, you probably got to consider them a title challenger now. They're 4 points off the top. They do have a lot of the big teams to face, but that can be a good and a bad thing, can't it? So I say my takeaway was, really good fight shown from Bodø/Glimt, Molde digging in there. There's still a couple of sides that shouldn't be up there, but they are. Kristiansund on 35 points and Lillestrøm on 34. I mean, at this stage, with 11 games left, they really shouldn't have any right to be in the mixer, but they are. But I expect them both to fall away. But for now, they're in contention. So, that's a takeaway. The other takeaway for me, Brann, I've been quite impressed with Brann in the last couple of weeks. They actually look like a proper football club again, proper football team again. Sorry, playing some decent style. That big signing in summer, Sivert Helter Nielsen, we talked about him, their ex-player. He just makes a massive difference in midfield. But I think of the size at the bottom, they definitely impressed me the most.
Yeah, it could well be lesson to any sort of team who wants to stay up. Maybe have a crazy, chaotic, wild beer-fueled sex party, and then you might get everything out of your system. Maybe some teams in Allsvenskan can take a note on that one. But no, on a serious note. Mulder, of course, and Bodø Glimt at the moment are two sort of, top of the top two. 1 point between them. Bodø Glimt just ahead by 1 point at this moment in time with 19 games played. But my boys Christiansen, third in the league. I'm sort of almost starting to nail my sort of colours to the mast on this one. We are quite diplomatic, aren't we, on this podcast? We don't necessarily take sides. But my soft spot for Christiansen is sort of slowly turning into sort of something a bit more concrete, really, because I can't believe they're third in the table. How long can this go on for, or is it going to peter out?
It will peter out. They've been very lucky in the last two games. They have basically scored last-minute winners to beat Strømsgodset away and Haugesund at home. Fair play. A match is 95 minutes long, isn't it? So, but when you can't keep scoring late goals, can you? Unless you're Alex Ferguson's Man United. But they've been very strong at home. They keep going. They had a bit of a setback in the cup midweek, which that surprised me. I thought that's the sort of thing they can have a go at. They're the sort of club that could definitely win a cup. So I think for them that would be a bit of a disappointment. But look, they keep overachieving. Incredible overachievement with this squad. The manager, I can't praise him high enough. I've named him pretty much manager of the season 2 of the last 3 years, I think. And he's going to be a massive contender again. Look, miracles can happen in this league. There's only 11 games left. The 3 points off the top. You never know. We're at a stage now where you can't rule out Christiansen or Lillestrøm. You can't, because they're in the mixer. I mean, logically, I don't think it can continue. But whilst you've got a ticket, you can win the raffle, can't you? And they're definitely in that raffle right now.
Yeah, well, in terms of briefly looking at the stats, in terms of expected goals, Mulder are top of the league quite clearly, 41.80. Bodø Glimt second. But in terms of expected goals against, Bodø Glimt are top of the league, 19.95 with 19 conceded. Mulder, in fact, in fourth in that. Lillestrøm and Sarpsborg, second and third best in the league for expected goals against. So that's a pointer maybe for the weeks to come. Lillestrøm currently fifth and Sarpsborg all the way down in 12th. So that's interesting. But yeah, we're going to touch on it. Once we've played 20 games, we'll probably have a more detailed wrap of that league, won't we? And then we've got a big interview next week with Tom Dent, who's going to come on the show and talk to us about life as a manager. So stay tuned for that next week. Let's look at the cup, in fact, while we're at it, because there's been a midweek round, but it's been cup football. I will just briefly read through all the results. And then, Steve, you could maybe pick up on one or two, that might have caught your eye, some shock results that you might want to touch upon. So let's just update the listeners on that now. So we had Grorud, and forgive me for pronunciation here if I get a few wrong, but Grorud 2, Lillestrøm 3 after extra time. Lillestrøm going through there. KFUM 3, Christiansen 1, which is, like you've mentioned there, the big shock. Christiansen going out. Alta 1, Bodø Glimt 2. Bryn 1, Mulder 4. Hamkam 1, Raufoss 2. We had a question about Hamkam, I think. Harstad 0, Brann 5. Big win for Brann there. Hegebo scoring twice. Kongsvinger 4, Flekkerøy 1. Moss, our man Sean Constable at Moss 1. Sanders Ulf 7. So we might have to give Sean Constable a text there and see what's gone on. Penalties helped Nardo FK beat Arendal 2-2. The game ended, but Nardo went through on penalties. Øygarden FK 0, Salzburg 5. Ranheim 1, Arlesen 1, but Arlesen go through on penalties. Sondal 0, Asan 2. IK Start 4, Mjøndalen 2. So that's Mjøndalen getting beaten by a lower division side. Strømsgodset 5, Stabæk 1. A bit of a beating there for bottom of the table. Stabæk, so their struggles go on. Vålerenga 0, Odd 3, which that definitely raises my eyebrow. And then Viking 3, Rosenborg 1, which is another one that raises my eyebrow, Steve. There's 2 big results there. What catches your eye from these results?
Yeah, that Strom's Godset result, there was a hat-trick scored by one of your old guys in Sweden, Kadiri. I think he was at Östersunds.
Yes.
Hat-trick there. So that caught my eye. If he can maybe sort of gel with Fred Friday in the league or something, they could become quite dangerous. I mean, the question about HamKam, by the way, that was from Joe Gold. Thanks for your question. If they achieve promotion, will HamKam add something new or different, exciting to the Eliteserien? Well, actually, in the upcoming interview with Tom Dent, who's manager of Sturdalsblink in the Obosligaen, that interview is going to come out as a standalone episode starting next week. We do talk about the Obos in detail. We talk about HamKam a bit, actually, as well. He highly rates HamKam. I don't know much about them myself. Disappointing result for them in the cup there, but at the moment they're in the position to maybe come back. What a great name for a club, by the way, HamKam. Just the sort of club that I myself would quite like the name of. It's actually good to see quite a few big boys go through. Molde, Bodø/Glimt, Viking are a big cup team. They always have been. Doesn't surprise me they beat Rosenborg. They always take the cup very seriously. Vålerenga are just not in any good form right now, so Odd beating them, that doesn't really shock me too much either. Some minnows that are going well. This Nardo team, Nardo. Actually, I don't actually know what league they're in, but I think they actually beat Sturdalsblink, Tom Dent's team, in a previous round of this cup. That they did 3-0. So for them to get through to this stage is obviously quite good for them. K from Oslo, fantastic result. But there's a few lower league sides in there. Kongsvinger through. It's going to be interesting. This, I think, the way they've done the cup this year, off the top of my head, it's not going to be complete before the end of 2021. I think they're going to. I think the real meaty rounds, I think quarterfinals or certainly the semi-final and the final, are going to be done in the spring of 2022. From what I read earlier in the year, that might have changed, but it's almost like a Swedish Cup thing. I think it's only going to be like a 1-year thing. It was to do with COVID and the scheduling and stuff. But it'd be interesting that the final's going to be in the spring, I think, Jonathan. I might be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure. Yeah,
no, you're totally right. The semi-finals 6th of April 2022, quarterfinals in March, and the final 1st of May 2022. And funnily enough, the 2022 Norwegian Cup will start before the 2021 Norwegian Cup ends. So, you're right. I think it's a backlog of fixtures, COVID probably related as well. Quite a lot of teams in this cup. Is it? I think it's straight knockout, isn't it, all the way through?
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting to see that we're probably just this one time only having the finals in the spring. I hope some big teams get in there. The final is usually it's always in Oslo. Big day out for anyone. I'd like to see, when Viking won the cup, we had Paul the Northman come on as a guest, and he obviously went there to the final. Great passion. I'd like to see a sort of side with a great following go there. I think Kongsvinger made the final of the cup not too many years ago. Things like that. Let's hope we get some really nice stories. Alternatively, it'd be great to see, say Molde, Bodø/Glimt battle it out, wouldn't it, in there? So, still quite a few big clubs left, but a nice mix of a couple of minnows as well and a couple of decent Obos sides. So, I'm not really into cups, apart from the Finnish Cup. But I will be keeping an eye on this cup, certainly in the spring when we don't have quite as much to talk about, do we? Sometimes. Norwegian Cup, some tasty stuff going on.
Yeah, and just to look at the 4th round, which one, as you mentioned, they won't even be played till March, so we can kind of put it to bed now after this and sort of not speak about it again for another 6 months or so. It's KFUM against Brann, Asan against Sarpsborg, Arlesund against Bodø/Glimt, Kongsvinger against Viking, Nardo, the big boys, Nardo, I think in the 3rd tier maybe, against Lillestrøm, Raufoss against Strom's Godset, Sanders Ulf against Start, and Molde against Odd. But as you said, we can put it in the books. We do have one, we talked about HamKam. We do have one question and then we'll wrap up the show. It's from a very loyal follower and logo creator, Joe Gould at 12th Yank. Always good to hear from you, Joe. He says, if they achieve promotion, will HamKam add something new or different or exciting to the Eliteserien? And then the other question is, who are we not talking about in either league that we should be a player from each league? Now, Steve, you've already touched on HamKam there, but it does give me an idea. If ever there was a potential for a sort of a joint mutual sponsorship I think Meatman Soccer and Ham Cam, that's got to be done at some point, hasn't it? I mean, surely you've got to get a Ham Cam t-shirt or a football shirt. Surely you might have a soft spot for them. Do they have like a sort of a, do they have a ham as their logo? Kind of like a glazed ham. Is it a team that kind of excites you? What are your thoughts on Ham Cam?
They're another team that my people, the subscribers and viewers on my Twitch channel always said I should do them as my Norwegian, as a save on Twitch, Ham Cam, Meatman Soccer. But
it's literally Ham Cam,
Their full name is Hammer Kamaratne. Historically, when I first followed Norwegian football, they were in the top flight quite a lot. I do believe their stadium is quite a big stadium. They're green coloured seats. I think their kit's green and white. I looked at the Obos League and I hope we get the likes of Fredrikstad, HamKam. It'd be nice to get some new clubs coming up there rather than the same people like Arlesund or Start. It seems to be like this yo-yoing thing. It's like in the Premier League, in West Brom or Fulham. Let's have someone new. So I hope they manage to get themselves promoted, because it would add. This is a new club again, isn't it? And that's a different sort of name that you don't forget that name. It's not a boring name like Start, is it? I've got a sort of vision in my mind of kind of a Babe Station, 3 a.m. kind of stream, but of literally just glazed pork products, Ham Cam. But if any club has ever wanted to sponsor Meatman Soccer, this is the perfect. This is like a marketer's dream. I'm licking my lips just thinking about the brand possibilities here, the commercial deals that we could be doing. So let's get Ham Cam back, and then it could be the Meatman Soccer JF Football Derby, Ham Cam Christiansen, who knows? But one player, Steve, in your league that no one's talking about that maybe we should be. One player that no one's talking about. That one's caught me out by surprise. I suppose I better be. How about if I look at maybe a Christiansen player? Maybe could be one to look out for here, because in terms of a team, did he ask about a team as well that we should be talking about, and we're not?
No, just player. Just player.
Yeah. Well, I'll just have a look at their squad. Let me bring my my spreadsheet up of players that. How about Snorre Strand Nielsen, right back at Christiansen, who I think he's done well in fantasy points this year. They signed him from Raufoss. They have some great signings from Obos, actually, to Christiansen. They signed him from Raufoss. He's done really well for them at right back. They rotate their side a lot, Christiansen, but it just says something that he started all but 2 of their games this season. And one he didn't start was the first match against Molde. We'll probably let him off that one. He was just probably integrated into the team a little bit. He was rested to the bench against Haugesund mid-season. They lost it 3-0. So actually his record when he plays is unbelievable. The 2 matches he didn't start, they lost. So Snorre Strand Nielsen, I don't think I've hardly ever mentioned him on the podcast this year, have I, Jonathan? I would say he has to be one that is a player that needs to be talked about and hasn't been.
Very interesting stuff there. I hope you enjoy that, Joe Gould. Interesting one for people to think about. That's a tough question, to be honest. I'm literally kind of racking my brains about who's not been talked about.
It's not going to be an IFK player, is it?
No, it's not going to be an IFK player.
It's one at Varberg, maybe. I don't know.
It won't be an IFK player for some time. I might pick. I might pick actually. I might pick an Elfsborg player. I might go for Bernhardsson. That's who I'm going to go for. Alexander Bernhardsson. Now, he is a player who caught my eye in the game against Malmö. And an interesting fact about him, he's got, I think in terms of minutes per goal, he's got the best ratio of minutes per goal in Allsvenskan. Might be goal or assist, but I'm pretty sure it's per goal. He's got 4 goals this season in 15 appearances, according to Y-Scout. But he's not a regular by any means. He kind of comes on, plays 45 minutes here. He played 88 minutes against Malmö, and I thought he looked quite good actually. He plays 60. He's played 60 minutes here, 60 minutes there, 70 minutes there. He's kind of working his way into the team, if you like. Career-wise, he was a Formula Orgrita, and now he's just starting to maybe establish himself in Elfsborg's squad. Elfsborg have been quite good at recruitment. He's 23 years old. Generally speaking, they've got their recruitment quite well in recent seasons, and I think they are a team that they're the sort of team that they're the kind of I used to do an IFK Göteborg about Elfsborg, didn't I? And kind of say where are they going. They've turned things around completely. They've sorted things out. I know behind the scenes, like the kind of recruitment they do, and that is very detailed. They go and I think they've got things right in recent seasons. Obviously, made it into the Conference League playoffs and all that sort of stuff. So, Bernhardson's a player to maybe keep an eye on. I quite like him. Played in wide areas, about 6'1". As I say, can play on sort of wide left, wide right kind of thing, depending on where you want him. Left-footed player, and I think he's someone who maybe with more minutes could maybe pop up and do a little bit more in seasons to come. He scored against Kalmar, scored against Feyenoord, in fact, as well, and scored against Hammarby. So he's got quite a decent ratio. So yeah, I'm going to go for him.
Interesting answer. Well, I think that pretty much wraps up this episode, Jonathan, doesn't it? It's been a good one. You've been firing out more blows than Anthony Joshua in this episode, and I've been in pretty good form as well. It was a pleasure as always.
Yeah, I think you've been a bit. You accused me, I think, last week of sort of sitting on the fence, and maybe it's rejuvenated me and given me this new lease of life, to be honest. But as you know, of course, I want to remain diplomatic as much as possible. But sometimes we have to tell it like it is, don't we, on the Nordic Football Podcast? So I hope you've enjoyed the show. I wanted to just give also a quick shout out before we leave to a listener who is trying to find him now at BothasSC, who said, "Hi there. I just wanted to say how much I enjoy listening to the podcast. I started listening a few months back, and I really like the down-to-earth, in-depth discussions. I'm now a Djurgården and Lillestrøm convert. So, yeah, thanks so much. It's always good to hear kind of like people listening to, who enjoy the show. We love your feedback. You can follow us on Twitter at Nordic Footpod. And of course, you can grab us on Patreon, patreon.com/Nordic Football Podcast, if you wanted to sort of listen to the bonus episodes or also subscribe and, support us to produce more content, basically. But thanks so much, both of us. I appreciate it. I'm not sure what episode you listened to become a Djurgården fan. It must have been the Ghostbusters episode and not the one where they lost the derby. But like I say, in seriousness, we really appreciate all your support.
Yes, thank you very much for that. And it's a good job he wasn't listening a few seasons ago, because he certainly wouldn't have been converted to a Lillestrøm fan, would he? Because we didn't talk about them enough. But it's great to hear that sort of comments. Thanks for your kind words. And like I say, it was a pleasure as always, Jonathan. Stay safe, everyone.
Well, you know what, Steve? It's probably it could be actually the opposite. Maybe you've been talking them down a little bit, and a bit like me with Christensen. You're kind of saying they're going to get relegated. They're not for you, and maybe it's a bit contrarian on that one. But no, either way, it's always great to see people getting interested in the league, isn't it? And yeah, it's nice.
Yes, it is. It is very nice. And just a reminder, you can follow us on Twitter at Nordic Football. You can follow me on Twitter at Meatman Soccer, and Jonathan at JF Football. But yeah, from this episode, that's it. Stay safe. Take care. Goodbye, everyone. And we'll see you next time.
Take care, everyone.